We still being recorded?
Yeah.
I don't know.
We got to keep it gangster. You already know.
No. It takes a second in your old ass brain.
Previously on Chat 62.
Man, I remember, we just talked a lot of we didn't have that much to do,
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember, man, it was a great group of guys. I mean, I've heard you guys talk about Estrada. Definitely remember him and the impression he made.
Gotta say it right. How do you say his name?
Estrada.
No, you gotta roll that R, man.
Estrada. From El Monte.
El Monte.
That's when I got to know Henry Mandavares, and we were roommates for a little bit. Cool people. He was young. I remember he used to give me because I used to say like, "Hey man, like my mom's from Whittier or whatever," and he'd be like, "My mom's from Whittier, fool." Like what, So it was just good, man. I was like, a lot of these guys who just like became like brothers. You get to tease each other, mess with each other. Yeah, I met a whole bunch of new guys. That was cool.
So I saw that you were able to head down to base and you pinned the chevrons on Davis.
That was a treat, man. That was really cool to be able to head down to Camp Lejeune and do that with my son. He'd been working really hard, didn't know if he was going to get promoted, but, got everything together a couple months before he got out. Definitely a memorable moment. As I was pinning the chevrons on, I was telling him, I was like, which is true. I was like 80 years ago today, like 1944, your great grandfather was storming the beaches of the island of Peleliu, and he ended up getting a Purple Heart on there at it was shot October 31st, 1944. And here he was 80 years later, getting his chevrons pinned on. So just a really, really, a really good milestone, man. And just a good reminder for him that, we belong places. The Marine Corps belongs to us. It's a family thing, no matter kind of what you're doing or what's going on, and just to embrace that. So, it was really special. Thanks for asking about that.
Yeah, no problem, dude. It's all intertwined. No matter what, it's always intertwined. So what was going through your head as you were pinning the chevrons on Davis?
Good question. I don't know. I was just, really proud of him, just thinking about his growth as a man. And afterwards, they got done and there's 4 people who got promoted and they were like, speech, and had everybody go around and say a couple words. And I'm not sure if he ever had like addressed the squad or platoon or whatever, there's like 20 guys out there. And he just out of nowhere, it comes like this booming voice. He's like, listen up, like, I just want to let you guys know, like, I kind of like blacked out for a minute. He was like, just, like, no matter what you encounter and no matter the trials, just keep doing your best. And I've been here for 3 years and there's all type of but the whole time it's like a resonating deep, I'm like, oh, like this dude. Okay. So I was like, he grew up in my eyes in that moment. It's just like that moment when one of your kids passes, like, I think they're going to be okay. Yeah. So I was like, okay, cool.
That was his moment, right?
That was his moment. 100%. 100%.
Give me chills again, man. I mean, no, I'm a father of a 12-year-old son, and I can't wait for that day. Just to see, like, wow, he's got it in him. So was that your first time back in Camp Lejeune?
I've been a couple times over the last few years. When he got done with, kind of rewind back to beginning of 2021, he graduated from boot camp and then MCT and PA school, and we helped him move into his unit, I guess about June 2021, and come back there a couple times for birthdays and things like that. So I got a little bit more familiar with Jacksonville. I've gone down a few different times down there, so it's been
So let's go ahead and talk about your time at 5th Marines as you were finishing up your time at the PAC. You did the rest of your time at 5th Marines at the PAC, correct?
Yep.
What was that last year like?
It was just really, just fast and furious, Let's see here. We got back beginning of 2000. Yeah, beginning of 2000. And if you want to say from like August or July 2000 to July 2001, yeah, it was just a lot of like fast living, I guess. We were frequently going out to either LA or, Tijuana on Tuesday or whatever night it was. We had field day, and that was always great. For the life of me, I don't understand like how that was just a normal thing where you jump in the car, go down to TJ till like 3:00 in the morning, get back 4:00 in the morning, and
be in formation
on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Huh?
And be in formation by 7:30, 8:00, depending on what time they had us there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And then be in the office and just kind of be like, dying up against the computer and have to stay up all night getting the barracks room clean on Wednesday. And
I remember, I remember Thursdays being being field day. It would be in the office, then into the barracks, and then I would see people dressing up, ready to go, getting ready to leave, so they wouldn't dirty their rooms. And I recall some people just sleeping in their cars just so they wouldn't mess up their bed or anything else aside from going in and getting changed really quick and leaving, so they wouldn't have any kind of reprimand for not passing their field day inspection. So that's funny. I miss those TJ. Well, I don't miss those TJ days. I remember getting in a car accident on the way back for one of those adventures with two Armandos from 1st CEB, another corporal. I don't know if you knew him, Alfred Seeley. He was from Africa, and he was a really good soccer player, and the Marines used him every time they had soccer tournaments. He was also a great Marine too, not just because he was a great soccer player, but he was a good friend and really, really showed that camaraderie when it came to showing you that brotherly love, I guess, So, I know I still follow him on social media every now and then. He'll post something and it's good to see him, but that's on a different tangent. Sorry.
So your last year in the Corps.
Last year in the Marine Corps, yeah, I don't remember too much. I'm going to be straight up with you, but that is the intro, is the preview clip. I don't remember the last year. I remember I got married,
You mentioned that, yeah.
Yeah, May. Met my wife in March, got married in May.
Did you meet her on St. Patrick's Day, no?
We did. We met on St. Patrick's Day. It was wild. It was crazy. It was like Children of the Corn up in Chico, California. I'm telling you, bro. You guys remember Lyndon Walker?
Yeah.
Yeah. We went through a lot of like life drama together. That's a whole other conversation. But the way it starts, I'm in my barracks room, that 3rd floor, 4th floor, Friday night. Lyndon walks by. Bro, this is 7 at night. This isn't like after work. I got a couple pizzas from, remember 2-for-1 pizza? Got some 2-for-1 pizza. Dude, bro. Lyndon's like, hey, man, I need a ride up to see my girlfriend. I'm like, okay, And he's like, yeah, she lives up in Chico. And it's like a big college party town. And the guy ratio is like 17-1 or something like that. And I'm like, bro, I like those odds. I was going to play PlayStation and eat pizza. So that sounds like a better alternative. So I'm like, bet, let's go. So we get in the car, the Geo Prism, the black Geo Prism. You remember that? I have some pictures of that thing. We drive 8 hours, to Chico. It's 512 miles one way.
I'm looking at it on the map.
Yeah, the furthest I had ever went, furthest north was Sacramento. Been up to the Bay a couple times and Stockton and Sacramento. So we get to Sacramento. This is, now it's like midnight, 1:00 in the morning, and we just keep driving. And I'm like, where in the hell are we? You get to Sacramento, you take the 99, the 5 goes up here, you take the 99 inward. I got to the apartments where his girlfriend was at. And at the time, my wife was best friends with his wife. And St. Patrick's Day weekend, the apartments they lived in were affectionately known as like the zoo. They had the nickname for being called the zoo because it was so wild up in Chico. I'm 21. I'm in the thick and prime of my party life. We're going to Tijuana, we're going to LA, we're going to San Diego. We're doing some things. And I get to Chico, man, and there's just tons of young people and college kids running around. And I just remember thinking, y'all need to slow down. This is too wild for me. And I'm the biggest crazy hellion, that was hanging around at the time. And it was just wild, dude. The second weekend we went up there, the apartment manager came out and was trying to tell some kids, hey, quiet down, blah, blah, blah. They put a couch on top of her car and set it on fire.
Oh my God.
And we just all went out. Dude, I'm telling you, it was insane. I was what's going on? Totally freaked out. So me and Amanda, we hit it off, I guess. And we got married 6 weeks later. Yeah, man, it just, all the stuff, all the partying, all the fast lifestyle, there in that last year, it just continued to go on. So it was, and I'm not happy. I'm not proud of that. I'm ashamed of some of the stuff I've done, but that was kind of the background there.
And no one's perfect.
Yeah. So yeah, bro, met my wife, got married. And the reason I guess I started down that rabbit hole was because I was going up there as much as I could every weekend. And so it was just, leave Friday night. That's LA traffic, Friday traffic, straight up prime LA traffic, work traffic. And then we'd get up there 1 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was, 2 o'clock. We'd spend Saturday there and spend Sunday for a few hours and come back, just enough time to get on base before the next day. And did that, I guess, 5 or 6 times, So met my wife 5 or 6 times and went to Las Vegas and went to Little Bells Chapel. And Marty, did you go to my wedding? I probably should know this, but no.
I try to stay local or on base on the weekends if I could. And if someone was willing to drive me to LA, I would take the ride by filling up their tank with gas and be like, all right, let's go. Just pick me up on Sunday too. I didn't go to the Vegas ball. I only went to one Marine Corps ball. I didn't do too much like that. And every time I got invited, even to parties, I think I only went to one good party with Bocart. Actually, it was Aaron Brown that invited us because his girlfriend was having a party. I don't know if you remember him.
Mm-mm.
No. And it was out in...
Did he work at the PAC too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was on our...
I knew a Brown, but he worked for whatever that group, NBC. Sergeant... I don't know if you guys remember Sergeant Papke?
No.
I think he was gone by the time.
Well, you remember Eugene Jones, right? Yeah, remember where he sat? At our side, when you walked in through the door, through the back, he was the first cubicle when there was the printing station. Wow, I have the memory. I have a picture, right? Of not of that specifically, but of the office. I could show you where he sat. And I have pictures of Aaron Brown. He was a good guy. I think he re-enlisted and he got sent somewhere far. I forgot where though. But I haven't talked to him in a while. I should reach out to him. Sure. Yeah. Brought back a memory. Yeah, what was the last day like? Or what was the last week like? Yeah, let's see if you remember that. I mean, you must have had some sort of emotion driving off that tomato patch if you went off that way,
Man, I'm trying to remember. I think what we'd end up doing was that last day, Amanda was driving down from Northern California and I was leaving from base. We met in Bakersfield there with the 40 Junction and started our trip back east. Yeah, I think the last couple of weeks were cool. They gave me a lot of coverage about, hey, Stringer's, short timer, I'd have to come to the office or do whatever, for the last couple of weeks. I was probably checked out, man, 2-3 weeks before that. I don't remember if I tried to throw my boots up on the wire. My son and I were talking about that. That's always a cool tidbit, when Marines get out, there's a tradition of them taking their combat boots, tying the laces together so they're end to end, and then kind of throwing them up in this, arc spin wheel pattern to get them to tie around the power lines. And so, depending on when you were coming and going, you see a couple pairs up there, and then once in a while you'd see somebody actually with their car pulled out on the side of the road, and they're chucking them, and you'd be like, "Yeah, let's go," or whatever. So I don't know. I think Davis is going to try to do that somewhere, but. Yeah, I don't remember too much about leaving base. just remember doing the checkout process and was just ready to go, ready to be done with it.
How was Amanda? Was she on board with going to Lexington immediately? Or because that's interesting because everybody has been local for the most part that we've interviewed, or they didn't really get into it, but you did. And I'm curious.
Oh yeah, she was pumped up. She was excited. She grew up in Paradise, California, that mountain city that burned down a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
She was ready to get the heck out of Dodge. She was 19. I was 21. And she had actually, I guess 6 months prior, she had answered an ad in the paper for a nanny in New Jersey. And so she'd actually moved to New Jersey, like, hey, like you need a babysitter, like a live-in babysitter for some Jewish couple in New Jersey or maybe New York, I can't remember. And they flew her out there. She stayed for like a week. Kids treated her like crap. And she was like, I'm out of here. And so she came back. So, I mean, I think she was chomping at the bit to get out of that small, country mountain town. And then we moved out and she was ready to go. I mean, 2003 or 2004, that's when we started kind of having an annual summer vacation out to my friend's house out in Laguna Niguel. So we ended up, kind of coming back out there every summer and whenever we could. And after a couple of years of that, that's when we started talking about moving back out to Orange County around 2007, 2008. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So.
And what happened there? It stayed as plans, and that was it. Just talk. Dude,
that was so after that stuff kind of blew up in our marriage early on, and I'm happy to talk about that because it was just one of those life-shaping things. That was 2004, and then just a couple of years after that. And again, you have to go back to like my wife and I. We didn't know each other. Like, dude, we were, I don't want to say strangers, but like I've known you for like couple months, yeah. Or I've known you, I've seen you like 20 times, and still figuring out how to and we're kids, trying to figure out how to do life. And then we started talking about moving out, and which this is where my testimony starts to kind of kick in and take place. One of the reasons I went in the Marine Corps is because I was trying to break out of a drug addiction, with just partying and doing cocaine or whatever else was going on. And after all this stuff kind of fell out between me and my wife, we were doing okay, but I was still trying to bury a lot of pain, medicate and things like that. And it was just wanting to choose that lifestyle. I think I quit my job to like go to school full time, enrolled in classes, got paid the GI Bill money, got the student loans, and, didn't do school. That was kind of my setup for a couple semesters, and it was pretty lucrative, man. So I did that, cashed out my 401k, blew that on a whole bunch of different stuff. It's like 27K, man. It was like, it could have been a lot of money right now, but it's not. And I just remember this is literally the situation. I was unemployed, staying up all night, literally till 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd sleep until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. My wife would get home from work. I'd wake up off the couch and just repeat. That was going on for several months. And we decided that we're going to move to California and stay at my buddy's house, and ended up kind of through this process damaging that relationship. So I'm a train wreck just coming at you guys. You know what I mean? We said, F it, we're going to move. We're going to rent out our house and do this and that. And my parents, they're like, yeah, we don't want you to do that. Like, how about you just sell it to us for what you owe, and we'll fix it up and we'll sell it and keep whatever the proceeds may be. Because they thought that, if it was a rental, if there was damages, they were going to be the ones who went and fixed it. And so we loaded up. They were going to move our stuff out there. We loaded up my silver Nissan Altima at the time, a 99 silver Nissan Altima, with my son Davis. He was 7 years old at the time, and laundry and everything stacked to the brim. And just literally, it was a random weekend or middle of February of 2008. Just started driving across the country, and she had got a job at UCI before we went out there, and was set up, and drove for a couple of days, and called my buddy up and was like, hey, on the payphone. I don't think we had cell phones. Like, hey, I'm going to be at your house this afternoon, and we stayed with him for a couple months. And then I ended up getting a job at UCI, left, because I got a job at Lindora. I don't know if they still have those medical clinics out there.
No,
I don't
maybe.
know. Yeah. I think
Maybe
you might.
one.
Lindora.
Yeah, the weight loss place.
Yeah.
Yep. And then got a job out there. And so I went from, being on my couch and doing all this stuff to having a job that paid pretty decently, and stayed out there for a couple of years. But eventually my old self kind of caught back up with me. And anyway, so yeah, started going back like into some really bad behavior. And there's a church up down the road right there at the end of Crown Valley Parkway called South Shores Church. And it's just wanted to go in there because thought it had a great view and, overlooked the Ritz-Carlton and the golf course right there in the Pacific Ocean. And that's where the Lord really started to draw us close to him, and got baptized and with my wife. But I wasn't really doing it for Jesus, just doing it for religious purposes. And yeah, man, the Lord started just supernaturally showing up in my life and shaking my cage and be like, hey, you need to stop doing this.
In what ways were the signs starting to pop up?
So I think, for me, it really started manifesting in just like conversations I was having with people, like in things that were going on or things I should be taking care of. I just felt like the Lord was using these people in my life to really speak to some things. And, just a certain point, it's like when you're trying to get a point across to your kid and you're trying not to be overly direct, and they don't want to get it and they don't want to get it. You're trying to be subtle and, trying to be, and I felt like it wasn't a voice from heaven or anything like that, but there was definitely words that were being spoken by other people that the Lord wanted me to hear. And that was like, stopping the drug use, like stop doing these things and stop trying to act like I'm not around. And more than anything, forget the external things. And that's what I try to like tell people, like, especially in the church today, like the real miracle or the real change is when a person has the conviction of heart. It's the inward change and the inward transformation that really, is the true miracle, because everybody to a certain degree can manage and mold their, external appearances. But it was for the first time in my life, I felt guilty, like for how I treated my family and my friends. And I can be a pretty good communicator, but when I'm thinking about myself and being selfish, I can use that for, very selfish and manipulative reasons, and not because I'm trying to do it, but just, that's the way it kind of hashed out. So, yeah. And so the Lord he began to do that. And then I knew I should stop doing a lot of things in my life, and I just wanted to continue on. And I started to go crazy, bro, like just losing my mind. And at one point I called my mom and like, hey, I need you to come out here and come get us. Like, I don't know if I can separate reality from whatever hallucinated state I'm in, and couldn't sleep, and, was taking all kinds of, sleep medications, and just a very, very low, dark valley season in my life. And had a young daughter, like I just felt like the world was trying to come get her and take her, and not like being like paranoid, but just in terms of I was being a weak dad, and I wasn't naive enough to not think there would be some like potential consequences and stuff like that. So yeah, I just knew I had to try to fight and do whatever I could for them. And so Amanda and I, just kind of a story that maybe can encapsulate this, is we went up to our in-laws' house, Christmas 2009. We go up to Gridley, California, which is south of, it's up there in Yuba County, Yuba City County, whatever it is. We were staying at her parents' house for Christmas. And before we went up there, I know that her family, a lot of trauma and stuff like that. And just from being married to my wife, I could tell that at a certain point of her life, like when her mom would get stressed out, she would grab Amanda and make her part of that stress, like she was like her, like animal or something. I don't know. It's really her blanket. I'm not sure. And so I'm just a student of human behavior and and trying to see things how they are. And so I told Amanda, I was like, hey, if things get stressful or pop off and they try grabbing Cora, because Cora was like 2.5 months old. I said, that's not going to be okay. Like, I'm not, it's not good, because I'm going to protect my daughter. So we're hanging out, and this is Christmas, bro. Christmas Eve, and flew in there. We didn't drive up, so we flew in. They picked us up at SAC, went up there. I forgot what was happening, but her mom was like, give me Cora. And I was like, no, you know what I mean? Like, sorry. And it was like, why? And I just kind of told him honestly, I'm like, look, I don't think you're in a place like there's an emotional, you're not going to hold my daughter. And her dad jumps in, is like, oh, you don't think my wife's good enough to hold your kid, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, sorry, like this is very awkward. But so they kicked us out. They're like, well, then you don't need to stay here. So it's me, Davis, Cora, she's 2 months old. Can't be here no more. All right, well, that really sucks. So we called my buddy Victor Garcia, and him and his wife came up from Sacramento, which is like an hour drive, and grabbed us, and we ended up staying with them. And the next day we went to church, and that's when, Amanda gave her life to the Lord, and Victor's wife, Lupe, prayed for her and led her through that. And that was kind of the catalyst of 2008, 2009 that really started working its way out in my life as far as,
You could say Christmas 2009 was the rock bottom.
Yeah. From 2000, let's say Christmas, 2009 into 2010, when we moved, that next 8 months was the valley, bro. That was ground zero. Because, man, I was out there. I wasn't working. Maybe you guys can appreciate this. I was right there, man, in Laguna Niguel. Like, it was gorgeous, but I started to hate, like, loathe that place. I couldn't stand it. Like, it was just too boxed in. It's not a very walk friendly. Like, you're in your community and you work, and that's kind of the design of the whole city. But I remember just taking Cora for walks and walking along the side of the beach, and I just came to resent all of it. And it had everything to do with the choices and the decisions I was making in life. I think there's was it John Milton that said the heart can make a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven, or something like that. Like, it can turn the best things to be really bad, but also turn the best things to be really good. Yeah. And so, man, that was and then that's when we moved to Lexington and got plugged into a church. So that was the rock bottom.
That's a strong testimony. And I think those that will appreciate it, know that certain, that moment, like you were sharing, like you just felt something or you saw something that you needed in your life, whether it be religious or spiritual. I think it was a component of everything. The church was, you were listening to the things that were around you, seeing the things that were not so good, and then finally coming to that self accountability and letting the term, the Spirit, work in your life and being led by it, and finally figuring it out by doing it in what we believe in Jesus' name, right?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, the reality and what kind of the Bible teaches is that you go from dead to being alive. Spiritually, you're dead and you're separated and you're alienated from God because of the sinful nature of humanity and what we've inherited, from the past and what we've done on our own accord. Like, we inherited sin and we sin. I mean, I got a black belt in sinning. So recognizing that, having the ability to just go, oh, and not only that, but, Almanz, I know you're familiar with the conversion of Saul, in the book of Acts. We're just reading through this, and he's going to persecute Christians. There's a huge light, and it just blinds him. And we actually talked about this with the youth group on Wednesday. This was cool. Saul had it all together. He had all the power, he had all the influence, he had all the education, he had all the training, and he got letters from the authorities to go hunt down and persecute Christians, which is interesting because there's a lot of people today, they know the Bible, they're in the churches, they know religion. They pursue Christians and other people in the name of what they believe will be pleasing to God, but it's not necessarily what he wants. And so when God blinds him, we were asking the kids, what's the effects of that? Like, what was God teaching Saul in this time? And, teaching him to be humble, teaching him to realize, that he thought that he had power, but God was like, I have power over your eyesight. You think you have power here on this earth. I can make you see or not see. And every molecule, every atom, I'm sovereign over. But then the other thing was that God used blindness to give Paul sight. Does that make sense? Like, he made him blind so that he could actually see spiritually about what the true reality of the world was. And I think that's so true in my testimony and probably several other people's lives, that some of those moments when you can't see and you can't really navigate and you're just being tossed in the storms of life and you have to go, man, there's a power greater than I directing these forces. And, sometimes for me, I feel like just not, especially just not being a good friend, being a good person, but just to have that ability to see and recognize, oh, I've been mistaken and I've been engaging in a lot of self-deception was truly transformative. And when I got to Kentucky, I was still doing drugs. I was still blowing it. And I came to a friend that was he was an intern pastor at the time. And he had just started a program to get his master's in biblical counseling. I was telling him, he's like, well, listen, he goes, man, first of all, he goes, you don't want to do those things. So that's a pretty good sign of spiritual life. Like, you're not just being unrepentant. You're not just doing this stuff and not caring, but you have conviction and things like that. And so over the next couple of years, as he did that biblical program in biblical counseling, walk through the Bible, and he was learning, and I was his guinea pig, and he would show me what the Bible taught about the heart and our desires and idolatry and how we choose and, want to pursue things that only God can fill. And so there's just a lot of grace and mercy and through that process. And that was just working through a little bit of it. Now there's still times of depression and anxiety and, just craziness that goes on as well. But kind of having those foundations has been really instrumental for me over the last couple of years.
How active are you involved in church now, and what exactly do you do within ministry?
So, we try to live faithful Christian lives, and for us, that's, gathering with the saints on Sunday, worshiping, taking communion and serving wherever possible. I've other churches we've gone to, I've led small community groups and things like that. And the church that we're at now is it's not a new plant. It's kind of a replant that they did 4 years ago, where they're trying to revitalize it and do things. So, we try to stay plugged in. That's what we want to center our life on. It's church on Sunday, small group on Tuesday, youth group on Wednesday, and then whatever the projects we can get on.
No, I totally get that. There was a point I was involved, I think 6 days out of the week. Same thing, Bible plugged in. Monday night, family Bible study. Childcare provided, so we're like, let's go learn about being better parents. And then it would be Tuesday night couples Bible study. Wednesday night would be the family night, where they do something fun and everything for everyone could be engaged. Thursday was probably the day off, and then Friday was like a little family game night. You just want to be involved and stay connected. I think there's a different piece that comes with that. And I remember even through that process, you lose a lot more people around your circle, because you would think, oh no, I got you through this process. And like, what are you doing? Why are you going to this place? And then of course the church will say, well, they don't understand, but you got to keep on doing you. No, but it gets deep. It gets really deep. We've all had those moments, man. That's strong. Do you have any life verses that you like? I know the whole Bible is a life verse, but any ones that sort of stand out, or do you have one specific?
I don't know who would say the whole Bible is a life verse, but I'm sure there's people out there.
There are. That's why I threw it out there. I know. Yeah.
Turn to Numbers and let's see if there's a life verse. I mean, there's great verses in Numbers, but not all Scripture is inspired by God, but not all Scripture is equally inspiring. I think that's the way that's perfect that I look at it. Like,
yeah.
For me, Romans 8:28 says, and we know that for those who love God, all things work out together for good for those who are called according to his purpose. And so that's just that's a reminder and a promise. In the beginning of Romans 8:1 says, therefore, there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. And, the whole arc of the letter to the Romans is that, hey, we're sinful, we rebelled against God, and all these things that I don't want to do, I do, and all the things I do want to do, I don't do. And what are we to do? That's Paul poses the question, Romans 8, therefore there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. And that kind of peaks that, no matter what's going on, and I think, and this is a long-winded answer to your question, Almanza, but verses that lead up to that, basically, there's nothing that can happen. There's no powers, there's no authorities, there's no anything that can separate us from the love of Jesus. That's always a really powerful verse to remember.
Well, the whole book of Romans, but that verse specifically is very inspirational. And I think it would touch to many that are probably out there that are trying to follow the ways of the Lord and maybe have a good reminder.
That's right. Yeah. And the other one that usually comes to mind is for me, Psalm 1. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seats of scoffers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and he meditates on it day and night. He'll be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that bring forth its fruit in every season. Whose leaf shall not wither, and whatever he does prosper. The godly are not so, but are like the chaff, and the wind drives them away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in judgment, nor the sinners in the congregation of the righteous. But the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. And for me, that's just a reminder to, God's word and connected with the Spirit, that to the degree that I do that is to the degree that I can bear fruit and stay healthy and have healthy life. It's easier said than done.
We're not cut off yet. We're not that dried up branch yet that's ready to, be pruned.
No, absolutely.
So we're still producing fruit one way, shape, or form. And
that's right.
And I know some of these terms are, if you haven't heard them, a lot of them are biblical terms, or at least not biblical, but at least the church terms that they use. When it comes to the sense of things of spiritualness, and of course, deep down into the Bible, I found that having to read it every single day is a must. I found that, like you said, staying connected with the body of believers is very important as well too, and also trying to find avenues to continue to grow. And a lot of it is through fellowship, right? Through the conversations you have, especially with some of our seniors that lived it, and if you actually take time to sit down and listen, you learn a lot, and when we're younger, we don't do that because we know it all. What is it like?
That's James 1:19. I understand this, my dear brothers and sisters. Everybody must be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry.
That's hard. I have a temper. You don't really understand sometimes the things that you've gone through in life to really things that were really impactful. Like some of those things that you've shared with us were deep. Not only deep, but like stuff that could have been damaging across the board for everybody, where it could have lost. A lot of people could have got lost in the faith spiritually through that process. And even going through that process, the fact that you were willing to find your errors, correct them, not understanding why, but doing it, you thrived.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's that mystery. It's that mystery. Sorry. That's out there. And it keeps me at awe every single time when I think about it on that daily basis. Knowing that I got a new day to start things new. I could have a reset if I needed to. And, unfortunately, some of those, again, things carry over, but it doesn't mean you don't think about them. It doesn't mean that a little reminder of it doesn't come back up. It just feels different now. It feels different than what it did back then.
New hope and a new reason for living every single day. The Christian faith is 2,000 years old. I've been to Jerusalem. I've been to Turkey. I've seen the old churches. We live in a day and age where people deny the existence of God and think Christianity's made up. And it's just, a lot of history. And I think, there's a lot of perversion of that. Obviously, people doing horrible things in the name of Christianity.
But going over there to seeing those, actually, I never been, and I've always wanted to go, but didn't you go during the time when it was a little more intense? I think there was combat zones that were happening and they were telling Americans to stay away.
Maybe. I took my son in 2019 to Israel, and then we went to Turkey in 2018, and then we went to Turkey. I'm talking about after I got out, I went to Israel and I didn't do a tour. I don't do all that stuff.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Show me. Yeah, no, I landed over there and I freestyled it, and there were some really great things and a lot of challenges that happened, but spent a couple days in Tel Aviv, went up north and went to Jerusalem and on the backside of the Jordan Valley, and went to go into the Palestinian controlled territory, and was asking some young Israeli, soldier, hey, is it safe? And he kind of laughed at me, he's 18 years old. He's like, yeah, you're safe, and as soon as you go in, you start smelling when you go into certain areas of the world, you smell the feces being burnt and the trash being burnt. Yeah, that should be its own little conversation. Travels, how the Marine Corps prepares you to travel. And that's, my thing, hey, if other people go and travel there, why can't I? And let me end with this story, and then I don't want to gobble up all the time, but in 2018, I planned to take out my son for his 17th birthday, go to Israel to just make memories. And we're in Jerusalem, and we're seeing the areas, and I'm looking over like, oh, that's where Abraham and like all the people walked through, and it was just really bizarre. And when I was there, there's a Jerusalem syndrome. Did I tell you about that?
No.
Okay. Yeah. So there's a diagnosed, published research condition called Jerusalem syndrome. And what happens is when people go over to Israel and they get Jerusalem, they start freaking out, hallucinating. They think that they're the Messiah. And periodically, they're with the hospitals there in Jerusalem. They admit people. That's why they call it Jerusalem syndrome, because people, they start prophesying and they start acting all weird. And there was a point where I felt like just a really mix of spiritual. It was just weird, man. It's just, you could feel it. It was like palatable spiritual pressure, like, and I'm like, what do I even believe about my faith? Like, I don't know if it's true and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, if Jesus is God, then that's all I need to think about. Came back, fast forward, there was my friend was in Southeast Asia, went there and went to the city with like, it was nothing but Chinese people. And it's a very weird, interesting dynamic over there. And this was in 6 weeks going to Jerusalem. So the reason I'm telling you that is because I went there and realized, like 2,000 years ago, this happened. Disciples went out, the Christianity faith started spreading. And then 6 weeks later, I ended up in this place in China, and there's tens of millions of people that never heard the gospel before, and it was like Bible, really like the reality of the faith and the reality that there was a time and point where Jesus came, and there's a time and point now where we're at now, that all things are unfolding and everybody's being reached, to kind of really opened up my eyes to the reality of things are still unfolding. God still has a plan and a purpose. And I know it feels like we're stuck in time a lot here in America. It's just never ending sitcom or, doing life and but anyway, so I don't know if there's a point to that.
Well, I'm going to look up that Jerusalem.
I know. I wrote it down too. I'm going to do the same thing.
I think we even not being in Jerusalem, I think I've had those moments too where I even doubted, or all of a sudden I have this, like, we need to, go out and do more for the Lord and do this and that. And now I just want to have a small conversation with one person. And if I could impact his life one way, shape or form, then great. If I could do it with a small group of 5, even better. But I don't think I could do more than that at this point, so, but yeah, bro. Thanks for sharing that. That's deep. And I know a lot of people are going to appreciate that.
Right on.
I know it's part of the connection. It's part of the unity. It's part of the hope. It's part of the dynamic of the healing process. And this is beautiful. And we all have our own experience, so when it comes to that moment, so I think having those aha moments. Aha.
Aha.
What are you doing? What's your current career?
What I've been doing over the last, 15 plus years is helping with overseeing research studies, clinical research studies, kind of like as a research manager and a research coordinator. So it started off seeing patients, doing like stuff in the clinics and hospital based. If you have like a study, you want to see if a new drug works. Yeah, running clinical trials and then kind of doing some other health related research as well. So right now I work for a head and neck surgeon who has a really big interest and expertise in health disparities, hearing health disparities. It's a big issue, especially here in Kentucky and, Appalachian region, that people are just separated from, audiology clinics, audiologists and things like that. Yeah, if somebody wants to study something and do research on it, that's kind of where I can jump in. And that's everything from the contracting and just understanding the administrative paperwork, a lot of that stuff is done by lawyers and I don't add to that. And then just kind of the overall strategy of how do you do a project like that in a clinic, or how do you do that in the community, and a lot of community-based research that we're involved with right now, which is cool, versus just seeing patients in a clinic. But yeah, a research manager and trying to grow within that.
That's pretty cool. Doing administrative stuff, just like you did back in the Marine Corps days. No, I'm just.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I think, like being, having that job like an HR specialist, like we were, that when you're when you're dealing with people's money or their pay entitlements, that's like some high value stuff. That's high stress stuff. That's real life stuff. So I think doing that, and then like kind of transitioning into the healthcare field where you're dealing with patients' health information and stuff like that, it really helped prepare you to be able to deal with stuff.
I do agree with that 100%. Working in the field that I work in, same thing. We don't do research, but we do work with doctors that do research. We work close. A hospital I worked at, they had the Lindquist Institute. I guess that's like a big research corporation, and so
Yep.
I know what you do, and it's great. It's great work. A lot of people don't know what really goes into things when they're actually put out into play. How do you feel that the Marine Corps has helped you basically through this process of life as well, aside from religion? Looking back at, like we said earlier, like we are each other's youth, Looking back at that, what were some of the formative things that you say you took from that?
Yeah, I think, although I don't do it that well, but just, I'm not good at this, but I need to get better. Having just pride in your work and doing your work with excellence, being squared away and doing stuff. It's not something I do, but at least there's a category and a bucket I have for it, like to be able to go, I can do better. And just resiliency, and I don't know if that's the 13 weeks at boot camp and reprogramming your brain forever, but just to be able to know that you're going to survive, that you're going to be able to pull it out no matter what. And, a lot of times there's competing voices with that, right? There's voices that saying, it's not going to be better. It's not going to be okay. It's all doom and gloom. And it's like, well, not today. I think there's a boldness, and there's a, dealing with fear and dealing with scary situations is not something that you feel like you have to avoid, like you can lean into those and know that you can at least manage it, you can at least walk into it and deal with that. And just like subconsciously to be straight up, like, I know I'm crazier than everybody. You know what I mean? Like, I know that if you want to go, bro, I'm going to the ends of the earth and I don't think you're going to follow me, So Right. It's just always that there's a mental edge that allows me to go, you don't know, but I know. And I think there's a lot of that is really helpful. For me, kind of talking about how the Marine Corps helped prepare me and what that's kind of translated into is, right now I work with head and neck surgeons. It's otolaryngology, the ENT department. Before that, I spent 4 years in orthopedic trauma surgery. And I started my career off with doing some work for transplant surgeons. And so in the last 10 years, so I work with a lot of surgeons. They're really motivated. They're they're the brightest of the brightest. They're, high school football quarterbacks, like the MVP, the prom king, the prom queen, and they gravitate. And then this is kind of the dynamic and the environment. And I love that, like, I don't care if they're snippy and straightforward and hardcore and, a lot of great people. But there's also, some psychopaths, and there's also just people that are naturally gravitate towards those type of positions in life. So I like how they go hard, I like how it's, competitive and good natured and trying to bring out the best in one another. So there's no place I'd rather be in terms of, I'd rather be on the mission field. That's like a wave of a magic wand would be to go do stuff overseas. But, working with surgeons and kind of being in a high pressure, high stakes situation is something that I'm pretty comfortable with. And I don't know if everybody, has that luxury.
Yeah, no, that's true. And that's great though, that your heart wants to be in the mission field. Not everybody's heart wants to do that. Spreading the gospel, right? That's what, through your works, love, and action. So
that's right.
That's awesome. Can you describe a moment that made you feel proud to serve your country? Maybe on that trip to the Philippines? We could expand on that a little bit. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just laughing. It's a joke Erik and I have. Can you describe a moment that made you feel proud to serve your country? How has your military experience influenced your life? And what lessons have you carried with you of service and a life of wanting positive change for that leadership growth within not only your home life, but your work life and community life? And it's just amazing to see what what life experiences have allowed you to go through so you could be who you are today?
Yeah, as you're like asking that, I was thinking about with my son. I realized when he went in and he was going through that process, like the military and the Marine Corps specifically introduces you to reality, like, and it introduces you to who you really are and your own limitations. And I think that's such a wonderful gift that most people don't get, like in life, like, or if they do, it just comes later because that's when life circumstances start to hit you in different ways. But yeah, man, being able to just know that you can be broken to pieces and still move forward and have a resiliency there you can't put a price on it. You can't buy it. You can't study it. You just have to experience it and go through it. And then just the brotherhood, just having a deep abiding love for people you served with and fellow veterans and, fellow Marines. And it's special to be part of something that few people have actually been a part of. And
I agree with that statement. Was there anything that you might have done differently? Like if you look back at it, like
I would have taken it seriously. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I already knew the answer to that. Yeah, I would have, like, what I realized probably, 15 years ago, 12, 15 years ago now is, you can start to take yourself seriously and take your roles and your leadership and your responsibilities serious now or not, or later. And just to really, even though it was kind of a goofy environment, dysfunctional, you have staff NCOs that were maybe not the greatest leaders in the world, but just to really find my purpose and develop who I was going to be, have a clear picture. But I don't know if that's possible, at that age. It's hard.
That's true. Looking back at it, yeah, it's probably is harder than we think it is, I wish I would have taken it a lot more serious. How about you, Eric?
Oh, definitely.
Any words of motivation for any future Marines or Marines currently enlisting?
Yeah. No, my advice is do it. The military is the X factor, in your development and your career. And if you want to do it, do it. And because so few people are actually enlisting, that it even becomes more special, more unique. I know they got some really funny stuff going on in the military right now that gets rolled out, but the military provides you with a one-of-a-kind training. The VA benefits and the educational benefits alone now, is ridiculous. It's just really good. Start having experiences, like, and this is career life advice as well, but just with the military is go out and just do stuff, get experiences. Experiences lead to clarity. You do something, and like my son, he doesn't know what he wants to do. And I'm like, well, tell me what you don't want to do, and like, let's start there. Eliminate the crap you don't want to do. He doesn't want to work in an office. All right, well, let's talk about that, because 75% of all jobs that are out there now, you can default to working in an office setting just by nature of the world we live in today. So go, I don't know, find stuff in forestry or outdoor camps or, whatever. And just have a plan, have some goals in mind about what you want to accomplish in your time. But yeah, I point every young person that I have a chance to, I encourage them to go in the military if possible. Let's just do it. Just do it.
And any words for our veterans out there, some motivating words for them that could maybe give them some hope, encouraging hope.
Yeah, you're not alone. That's what I think everybody needs to hear. You're not alone physically or, just kind of philosophically, but everybody's going through their own struggle. I think all of us have our own valleys and our depressions and our worries that we go through. And I mean, I go through like times where I feel like I'm breaking down, man. It's just, I got to detach and cut away and sort stuff out. And that doesn't make you weird. That doesn't make you weak. It just means that we live in a fallen world. Stay connected, keep communicating. If anybody has the opportunity to come and talk with you guys and talk about their own path and their own journey, you should do that. I mean, like I said, listening to the conversations and then thinking about like, what am I even talk about and how do I process and really reflect on those years of service and after the service it's a challenging thing, but it's therapeutic in its own right. Remembering that, and we're in this like 62 area pack, and we all get dispersed. So we all feel, it's sometimes you don't feel like you're understood, or you just don't fit in, or maybe, there's just, I don't know, maybe that's just me. But then when you have conversations like this with people you used to serve with, you're like, okay, like, I think we're all kind of cut from the same cloth, in that regard. But yeah, man, find somebody to talk with, do good, love others. That's my advice.
Corporal Paul Stringer, thank you for joining us on Chat 62.
Thank you.
It was great having you, great seeing you, great having these moments, and I'm sure we'll have other great chats.
Henry Rodriguez, you're next.
Let's go. Appreciate it, guys.
Dingleberry. Hey everyone, I'm here today and I want to talk to you about something that's really important to us, and that's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. You can reach them by calling or texting 988.
That's right. We want to emphasize how crucial it is to reach out for help if you're struggling with thoughts of suicide or just need someone to talk to. You are not alone. There are people who care about you and want to support you.
Calling 988 or texting can be a difficult but incredibly brave step to take. It takes courage to reach out for help, but it's often the first step towards healing and finding a more positive path forward.
Remember, you are strong, capable, and loved. You have so much to offer the world, and your life is valuable and worth living. If you're struggling, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can call or text 988 anytime, day or night, and speak to a trained crisis counselor who can provide you with support and guidance.
We want to encourage everyone to prioritize their mental health and well-being. You don't have to go through tough times alone. There are people who care about you and want to help.
So let's work together and create a world where everyone can thrive and live their best lives. Remember, 988 is more than just a number. It's a lifeline. Let's use it and support each other every step of the way.